Hello,
Excellent.
everybody. This is Victor Davis Hanson on the Victor Davis Hanson Show. I'm solo today with one of our interviews. Jack and Sammy will be with us soon. And it's my pleasure to announce that David Mamet, I think probably the greatest combined screenwriter and playwright and author in America, still living, is our guest. And today is the pub date of his new book, The Disenlightenment: Politics, Horror, and Entertainment. And so it's my pleasure, David, that you're with us. Thank you very much. What disenlightenment, and I looked at the essays, and we've been told as college graduates that the Enlightenment saved Western civilization and the post-Enlightenment in its anti-religious sense. But what is this use of the prefix disenlightenment? What's your do you see the Enlightenment that it was necessary and now it's become, I don't know.
Not at all, Victor. I mean, it's kind of ironic. It's a homage to the horror and the tragedy of wokeism, of the people who have taken the Enlightenment and chased it down the road to Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah. Do you think, is it the equality of result, the idea that we're going to make everybody equal or else? Is that the, what is it about woke that you find the most scary or the most disturbing? The emphasis on individual appearance, sexual orientation, or is it this Marxist idea that we have this binary between victimizer and victim, and then we put everybody in this category?
Well, I thought I came up with this idea, but I was reading Tom Sowell's book. What was it? It's not disassembling America. It's I've forgotten it, but he's talking about the same thing 15 years ago, and he's talking in piecemeal about the various perfidies, the destruction of the border, the equality of result rather than equality of opportunity, the marginalization of men, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm doing in the book is I'm looking at these various horrors and perfidies and crimes and absurdities and blasphemies and trying to take an overview and saying, what does it all mean? Where do they come together? Okay, what in the world do the transsexual people have in common with the Free Palestine people? Free Palestine people want to kill them, right? What in the world do the open border people have in common with the let men into women's sports? It doesn't make any sense. So as a playwright, what one is trying to do is take disparate scenes or disparate ideas and reduce them to a through line, saying what is actually happening all the time. And that's what a play is. It's as Aristotle said, it's the quest of the affronted protagonist to solve a problem, the clarity of which increases the farther he goes until he finally realizes, oh my God, it was there in front of me all the time.
Is the common enemy the unifying common denominator with all these disparate causes and initiatives and agendas? Is it the white male capitalist Western idea that they hate, and all of these are manifestations of it?
No, I think it's a lot worse than that. I think what I said, I finally began to achieve some clarity after working on all those essays and making the book over a couple of years, is that I said, I recognize the totality. And the totality is the open city. Paris in 1944, Naples in 43, 44. Tolstoy writes so beautifully about it in War and Peace, right? At Moscow in 1812. So what we have is a civilization that is decamped, and the administration, the Nazis, for example, leave Paris, and the Allies haven't shown up. And so you have different groups who are trying to achieve power. But my mistake was in first writing the essays, thinking, wait a second, what is the power of the administration that Biden administration is trying to do? Because obviously someone is shaking the country apart. There's going to be nothing left. So I realized it wasn't an administration. The Biden administration was a coup that then left town, right? The Obama Marxist Islamist Bidens were a coup that then decamped. So what you had was a vacuum of power, an open city in effect, where just as in Paris, the Marxists were on this street, the Patanists were over there, the Resistants were over there. the Trotskyites were over here, the blah, 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 blah. Everyone was saying, leave me alone. I'm going to loot. I'm going to do those things I want to do. I'm going to settle my scores. And once in a while, the Marxists, the Stalinists, and the Trotskyites would get together to gang up on the blah blah, and sometimes they would fight each other. But what I was looking at in the Biden, the years of the Biden horror, was the absence of an overriding power under which different groups are looting. They're looting, they're killing, they're looking for power.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they coalesce and sometimes they fight each other. But so that the resistance to Trump was resistance to the idea of a unifying power. Because if the unifying power comes in, you can't give $2 billion. This Sally says, you know what, I'm going to give $2 billion to my friend Stacey Abrams. She said, there's no president there, right? He's in the other room drooling. Okay.
Yeah.
And so they've decided we got the auto pen. Sally says, I want to give $2 billion to my friend Stacey Abrams, right? Jimmy says, well, Jesus Christ, okay, you want to do that, but you know what I want to do? I don't like war. I want to pull out of Afghanistan right now, we'll just get out, right? Billy says, well, that's ridiculous. And Jimmy says, yeah, okay, it's ridiculous. But on the other hand, you want to put men and women's sports. I'll vote for you, you vote for me. And so what you have is a cabal stirring the witch's cauldron of you get to do this, I get to do that. Okay, okay, okay. And just as in Paris and just as in any open city, you also have people settling scores. The FBI comes in and says, you know what, fuck Trump. That's what I want to do, right? In the middle, just like in the open city in Moscow, you had people who didn't have any plan, but they wanted to kill the guy to whom they owed 10,000 rubles to. So that's what I come to in my thinking brings me to at the end of the book. What we're looking at is an open city. There's nobody home. You look at Fox News every day or CNN, all the Dems are screaming about we have to have a message, we have to have a message. Well, they don't even have a party anymore, right?
Yeah, they do have this. I asked this question in a podcast. Why would they do something like open the border, lie about it, let in 12 million people? That's going to take a generation. I mean, each person is almost guaranteed a Supreme Court appeal. And then you look at the decriminalization in these blue cities. Everybody's leaving them. They're wastelands. These prosecutors, you know, the Karen Fox, and then you look at the mayors, they're destroying women's sports. You mentioned that. So it seems like somebody said, I don't like these people. I don't like them. I don't know, middle America or the average conservative, or I don't like people who play by the rules, and I'm going to destroy the system, and it's going to take them a generation after I leave to clean up these cities, to deal with the homeless, to deal with the illegal immigrants, to get the murderers out. And this is what I want. I want to just throw as much crap as I can, and the Free Palestine people as well. They've destroyed the universities. I mean, we've got 300,000 Chinese. Kennedy School of Government's got Communist Party members from China. We've got all these Palestinian people who have been helped with gutter and money, you know, these Middle East studies programs. And I think it's kind of a nihilism. They're saying, well, you know, you guys think you're in control and you go do your little pedestrian nuclear family lives and you think but you know what? We don't need a popular vote. We don't need public support. We're down on 2080 on every one of our issues, but we have institutional power. We have the media, we have the foundations, we have academia, and we can do a lot of damage to you. We're not constructive, but we can damage you. And I think it's almost I don't know, it's out of Satyricon, Petronius the Satyricon or something, just a chaotic, destroy the system. And they hate it. They hate everything about it. I guess I'm prejudiced because I'm at the campus and I looked at the Hamas camps for 4 months. I walked by and every time I would walk by, I'd say to one of these very affluent Middle East students, I said, the rules are that you can only camp one day here. And then I looked at the Jewish students, and they were counter-protesting. They were all well-dressed. They had a little tiny table. It was immaculate. And when you walk by, they said, would you like to hear about what happened on October 7 and the response? And you said yes. And you got over there in a very polite term. Meanwhile, the people over here, 10 times their numbers, camping with signs that said, be quiet, protesters asleep in their little tents. And they were screaming and yelling and they were defying. And then you had these impotent faculty and administrators walking by, and you'd say to them, look what they're doing. And then they went to the colonnades at Stanford, and it's sandstone historic, and they painted Hamas, globalized the intifada, everything. And then a week later, you saw these Mexican American maintenance people with tweezers trying to pick out every little piece of paint because they couldn't sandblast it without injuring. And these kids were walking by grinning. And so it was an assault on every aspect of a university, of rules. And they were saying to them, you're not going to do anything to us. You're not going to touch us because of your liberal pieties. And we hate you because you're weak and you're appeasing us. And if it hadn't, Trump is the only person, I think, in the Republican Party. I can't imagine a Mitt Romney or a late John McCain or a Bob Dole or the Bushes doing what he did to. He basically said, you think you're going to do that? I'm crazier than you are, and we'll see who wins. And that's where we are right now.
Yeah, it's absolutely where we are. Shelby Steele said something one time. He said he was in the camp. Where did he go? Did he go to Berkeley? He went to or he was in Ohio.
When he went to University of Utah, I think.
Yeah, he was at some place. And
San Jose State. He labored for San Jose State for years. He was absolutely brilliant. He was the best person in the English department. And he started to voice conservative things. And they tried to, believe it or not. And I taught 21 years at the CSU system. And you really have to try not to get tenure. It's pretty much a given. And they tried not to give him tenure, even though he'd published more than the entire department. They hated him so much because he was a confident, black, successful conservative. And they couldn't stand that. And these were white liberal elites that went after him in a very racist fashion.
But I'm referring to when he was a student. He was a student.
Graduate student at University of Utah, I think.
He was a student somewhere, and he was a radical, right? And he was very flat power. And he said they came into the president's office, and he was smoking a cigarette, Shelby said, and he was jabbering at this blah, 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 but he dropped the cigarette into the carpet and ground it out with his foot, right? And what he said was, in effect, it was one of the things he most regrets in his life, but what he seemed to say at the fence, it scared him to death. Right? Because what happens to a kid, if the kid knows it's supposed to be disciplined and you don't, the kid becomes terrified. Yeah. And he says, wait a second, somebody better be in charge here, because if these effing fools aren't going to step up, it better be me. And so that's what happened to a lot of these kids, because they've never been disciplined. They've never been given anything.
Generation after generation, too. Your parents as well.
I mean, this was going on when I was at college in the 60s. And so part of the problem is the Democratic Party just crumbled as soon as somebody on the left said blah, 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 free Palestine. All the Democratic Party, just like a table tipping, went to the left. And so then the people who were nobody, the squad, an example, said, oh, wait a second, you want to give me power? Okay, I'll take it. So there.
We're talking, everybody, with David Mamet, and we all know him as our premier playwright, but I don't think a lot of us appreciate his screenwritings. At least I was thinking some of my favorite movies of the last 40 years, Postman Always Rings Twice, The Verdict, The Untouchables, Hoffa, The Edge, and one my favorite one was Ronin.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I really love that movie. I first met you, David, at Shelby Steele's house, and this is but Obama was campaigning in 2008, and he was in Philadelphia. And I didn't know at the time that you had written a screenplay for Untouchables. And I said to you, I can't believe this guy. He got in front of everybody, and he said, we don't bring a knife to a gunfight. And have you ever heard anything? And you very quietly said, yeah, I've heard that before I wrote it. And I didn't know that. So it was that's how I first met David Mamet, and I had no idea. I knew you were a screenwriter, but I had no idea at the time that you've not only the range of your audience is amazing, from people who go to the theater to the average American that love these movies that you wrote, and in a way that appealed to them. And so we're very lucky. We're going to be right back with David Mamet. He's got a new book out, The Disenlightenment. And we're right back again with David. David, are you optimistic, neutral, wary, pessimistic about the next 3 years of the Trump administration? Can he make any headway at all?
Well, you know what it is, and you said it very early on, I think on the 6th or 7th, you said we haven't won the fight, but now we're in a fight.
Yeah.
They're going to have to get beat several more times.
Yes.
And that's where we are. We're in a fight. So in a real fight, we don't know where it's going to come out. We just know what we're going to do, which is we're going to fight, and we're going to do the best we can. And after that, it's with the gods. And Rebecca West said, it's not if you were in a fight, it's not whether or not you fought, but if you would have fought, had it come to you, right? It's not whether or not you went. Well, that's what she said, right? The question is, if it's necessary to fight, would you stand up and fight? And the answer for us on the conservative side, to the largest extent and to differing extents, is yes, right? Yeah. That we're fighting for the life of our country. And we just seen this phenomenal resurrection of the ability to fight. Because had they stolen another election, the country would have been over. And so the question, as you said, are we going to win the next couple of fights? And we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, all the traditional levers of power, the presidency, and for now, until the midterms at least, the House and the Senate, although thin margins. For all the criticism of the Supreme Court, it's more conservative than not. But all of that and the popularity of the issues, as I said earlier, it's pledged against this these institutional powers. One thing about the university I've noticed, it's kind of like a mossy rock. It looks really impressive, and you turn it over, and it's ugly underneath, worms and decay. And I don't think they're going to win this because, just from my experiences at Stanford, every issue that they are contending with Trump, they're going to lose. For the 2022 Supreme Court, they have separate graduations. They call them auxiliary, but you and I know that if they had a European-American separate graduation, they would shut it down in 2 seconds as racist. They have theme houses by race. They're violating the Supreme Court. They had a People's Liberation Army colonel that was on the faculty a few years ago. They didn't report Chinese communist money. Betsy DeVos fined them in the first term. I think it's pretty clear that they were charging up to 50% surcharges on federal grants. That's going to cost them $183 million that they were counting on. They ran Judge Duncan out of the law school. They shouted him down. They hijacked his lecture. The DEI person did at the law school. And then the trans students said they yelled at him, "We want your daughter to be raped." There were no consequences to any of them. I mentioned the Hamas. They had a lot of liberal faculty did an anti-Semitic study, David, at Stanford, 900 pages. And everybody thought they would whitewash it, but it was so egregious that even they had to say that Stanford was institutionalized had institutionalized anti-Semitism. They posted in kind of a braggadocious fashion that they were letting in 9 to 10% of the incoming class post George Floyd as white males. And even though that's a 33 to 35% demographic. So they've got so much exposure that, and they have a new president, but that's typical of all these campuses, and the public doesn't know any of that. And they're kind of like illegal immigration. People say, okay, Trump is trying to do it, but almost every day it's been so egregious. You get a murder, or you get this guy in Colorado, and the same thing with the universities. So, you learn that these 2 Harvard students that roughed up a Jewish student, the divinity school made one the grand marshal of the graduation, and the other guy in the law school, they gave him $65,000. It would have been a lot more honest if Harvard said, we have a Beat the Jew award, and we're going to give it this year to 2 guys who got 90 days cut a deal with the DA. They were found culpable, but they were so brave because they roughed up a Jewish guy that we gave one guy, he won the Beat the Jew award in the law school, and this guy won the Beat the Jew. That's what they're doing, basically.
It's not you say as if, but it's not as if. It's the truth.
It's true.
So I think we were talking years ago about the Thorsten Veblen, right? Who's a great a populist economist at the University of Chicago. And he's famous, of course, for writing a theory of the leisure class. He wrote a lot of great books. One of them is called The Higher Learning.
Thorsten Veblen, yeah, he was a great writer.
Yeah, but he was looking at what was happening in higher education in 1914. He said it's a scam. He said it's an absolute scam. The universities, he was at the University of Chicago, which has just been founded 20 years previously. He said it's a scam. He said it's all a diploma mill. Well, what they're doing is saying, come to our so what they're doing is competing against each other in giving out treats to attract students. One of the treats was this professor who won a Nobel Prize. Well, you're never going to see him, right? You're going to see his teaching assistants. As this goes on through the years, we're going to give you credit for life experience, right? Which is selling diplomas, or we're going to give you credit for an essay that everybody knows you didn't write, or we're going to give you a football team. And so, as you see over the last 100 years, the school keeps giving out these greater and greater inducements, exactly as if they're a resort, which in effect they are. And the latest inducement of these schools is, guess what? You get to beat up Jews.
Yeah,
that's what.
No, it is. It is.
It's the little submarine. The plastic submarine in the Kellogg's cornflakes.
You know what? It's funny. I was Stanford, Yale, Harvard, Princeton. They always advertised that up until George Floyd, that our median SAT score is 780. That we evaluate your GPA by the caliber of your high school. We're very, very rigorous. We take 5%. Then we have these curricula that are so hard that no one else can do it. A guy at Fresno State would flunk out, and that's why we get our prestige. But once they went down this road, they had been going down it, of course, but when they got rid of the SAT for 5 years and they stopped ranking comparative GPAs, and they went into what they would call privately reparations admissions. So these groups that were not, say, 200 points down on the SAT, or either their GPA was not competitive, or it was from a high school that was not competitive, and they put them all in. It's been a great experiment. So you talk to faculty, and I try to always talk when I visit, and they say something like the following, David. They said, I'm not going to die on the altar of standards. I only have 3 choices. I either water down the content, or I water down the grade, and Stanford and Yale gave 80% A's, or I got to bring in new ridiculous courses. And if I don't, the DEI auditors find that I have a systemic prejudice against certain groups. So I was telling everybody, I was talking to 4 or 5 Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, pretty well-off guys, and I said very naively, if they sold these cattle brands that you could go to Harvard or Yale or Chicago or Duke, whatever, because of their rigor, and then for a while, at least people, maybe they didn't learn anything, but they had to do well in these tests or something, so they had the semblance of education. So when you hired them at Google or Facebook, they spoke well, or they were good in analytics. Now they can't guarantee that. So what will happen to the prestige? And this guy, he said, where in the hell have you been, Victor? You are so far behind. If I have a choice between a Georgia Tech, a Virginia Tech, a Texas A&M graduate, and a Stanford, you think I'm crazy? I know those guys are well trained. They had to earn their grades, and they don't go to HR on the first day and complain about me. And we're hiring those people. And I think they don't realize that Trump is he's the end of the beginning. They don't understand that he's just a symptom of what they caused, and he's accelerated. He's a catalyst. But I think their whole prestige and how they settle as an entree into the wealthy elite class is over with. I really think that a lot of people are going to say, you know what?
I hope so.
It's a joke. It's a joke. Your degree is a joke.
But see, I've been doing that. I'm glad to hear you say that, because I've been doing that for years. Because when I'm making a movie, a lot of people, young people, would come up and say, "Oh, give me a job, give me a job." If I look at one of the elite universities, I'm going to say, you know what? No. Somebody went to the Santa Monica Community College. I'm going to say, okay, sit down and let's talk. But, Tom Sowell, of course, wrote this book about Black education
Yes, he
30
did.
years ago. He said the tragedy is when you lower the standards, the kids who have the lower standards can't do the work and then they can't get a job. And it's going to mean that other Black people who are going to be tarred with the same brush of saying, "Oh, I guess that you're an affirmative action, a graduate of Harvard." It's terrible. But part of what's got to happen is the parents got to stop saying, "I'm not going to give $1 million after taxes to send you to go protest and come out with a degree that's not fungible." So that's what's got to happen.
And it's happening. I think it's happening when these employers see that the graduates that are turned out are not competitive with places south of the Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah, indeed.
And yeah, and they're not competitive and they're not hiring as much. And I know I was on a hiring committee and we had 900 applicants to the Hoover Institution. And I was just stunned that when we interviewed people, some from German universities, some from British universities, and some from state universities versus the regular Stanford, Harvard, the other ones were just much more realistic, well-spoken, not crazy, not esoteric, not arrogant as a general stereotype. But the public, 60% now have no confidence in higher education. They're way ahead of the universities. The university people still think they have this allure or this power, this prestige, but I think the general public is done with them. And Trump has kind of lit the fuse of an explosive that was already there.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I think that's hopeful. David, what are you working on right now for your next project?
Well, I finished the movie. I did a play with Shia LaBeouf in a little theater, 100-seat theater over here, and it was good plays, really. And at the end of the run, Shia said, and Evan Benjonikite, who was his co-star, said, we don't have the theater anymore. Let's do it as a movie. So we did a movie based on this play. It's called Henry Johnson, just came out. People can watch it on henryjohnsonmovie.com, henryjohnsonmovie.com. And I'm really happy with it. It's about this guy who's so good-willed that A, everybody takes advantage of him, and B, he ruins everything he touches, which is to me an example of the liberals, because I think it was Arnold Bennett said, there are old fools and young fools, sad fools and happy fools, but there never was a fool who was not cruel.
Remember
Isn't that brilliant?
Robert Gates, remember he said that about Joe Biden? Joe Biden's been on the wrong side of every major foreign policy decision for the last 30 years, and he's been rewarded for it.
Well, yeah. Duh. Oh, speaking of that, just between two guys, right, in a private conversation, what's our president doing about Iran? I mean, how can there possibly be a deal that they'll keep, or is he just playing poker with them?
I'm hoping he's playing poker. I think his strategy is, I've got this MAGA, Candace Owen, these people, and they are non-interventionist, neo-isolationists. And we all know that Iran, you can't talk to Iran. They're proverbial liars. They want to destroy Israel. But if I do a preemptive raid before it's clear that they're going to reject everything. So I think what he's doing, and I don't know if it has a self, unfortunately, it might have a self, like a drone that's gone on its own mission. But I think he thinks he's going to tell the American people that he's exhausted trying to talk to them. And that, it's kind of like Obama, to tell you the truth. I'm going to talk, talk, talk. And then at some critical point, somebody's going to come to him in the summer or fall and say, Mr. President, they've got 12 bombs that they're at enrichment. You either have to act now or you can't act because they don't have any air defenses. Hezbollah is inert, Hamas is inert, the Houthis are inert. This is the only chance you're going to have. There's a lot of dissension. So this is the time to do it. And I think that would be I've talked to people and they seem to think that he wants to, it's sort of like the Ukraine thing, that he was playing art of the deal, that, hey, everybody, nobody's heard Putin's side of the story. And people came to Trump and they said, why don't you insult him? Why don't you call? And he said, no, 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 you don't insult your people, but we're going to go through this. And then he learned that Putin is not going to settle a deal, and now he's got credibility if he wants to, help Ukraine. I'm not going to get into whether he should or not. I think he should, but the point I'm making is I think he feels that he's got to exhaust. He did that with Baghdadi and ISIS. He said, I'm going to bomb the crap out of ISIS and I'm going to solve the ISIS. And then he started negotiating. And then all of a sudden, and he said the same thing about Iran. And then all of a sudden, Soleimani was vaporized, Baghdadi was vaporized, ISIS was vaporized, and then they came to him and they said, the Wagner group is running amok in Syria, they're killing everybody, and now they've attacked, an hour ago, they attacked the American installation, this base in Iraq, and people said, in Syria, excuse me, and they said, we can't do anything, and he said, kill them all. And they said that you'd kill more people than we did in the entire, you'll kill more Russians than we did during the whole Cold War. He said, kill them. And they killed anywhere from 200 to 400 of them. So I think that's what he's doing. And to the degree that I'm being objective or optimistic, I don't know.
Thank you.
I'm hoping he's doing that because it will be a blank disaster if you try to negotiate with them, especially in this weakened. They have no cards to play right now. They have no Hezbollah to commit terrorism. They can't launch 20,000 rockets like they have against Israeli civilian centers. The Houthis are kind of emasculated for a while, and Israel's ready to go, but Israel doesn't have the wherewithal for a 1 week strategic campaign with 20,000 pound, 30,000 pound bombs. They don't have the delivery system, at least in terms of aircraft. It would be better if we did it, but I think he's run on the idea we don't do optional wars in the Middle East anymore. I don't know if he defined that as aerial or ground. So I think he's looking not for a pretext, but trying to tell the Western world, I exhausted every avenue and I have no choice. So we'll see. But I'm worried. I'm worried.
We will see, won't we?
And same thing about Ukraine is even more interesting because today they hit the Kerch Bridge, that's the lifeline from Russia to Crimea, and then these drones that were delivered all the way to these Arctic bases, and are brilliant. They've destroyed 35% of the nuclear delivery bombers, and everybody is ecstatic. But until this happened, they were being ground down. They've lost 12 million people to refugees. So the country's 28 million out of 40 million people are still there. And they don't have the wherewithal to keep fighting. They were being ground down. So now they've done this and everybody's euphoric, but you don't know what the reaction is going to be and what our counter reaction to their action should be. Because we had kind of a rule in the Cold War when we faced the Soviets that we didn't allow the proxy of either side to attack or threaten the homeland of the rival. So when they armed Cuba to hit us, Kennedy, Curtis LeMay, and that whole bunch said to Khrushchev, you broke the rules. You're using a proxy to threaten the homeland. When we were in Vietnam, we had just started to have troops. We didn't threaten you. We were in a proxy third. So it's kind of a rule, you don't do that. And I don't know if those rules still apply, but everybody thinks that there's never going to be an escalation on the part of the Russians and all these threats are empty. But when you lose 30% of your strategic bombing fleet by a proxy, and I know that they said that we had no help, but I doubt that the Ukrainians had the intelligence or the satellite capability to know without us or the European. So that's pretty scary. And I mentioned it in this recent book, The End of Everything, that it was getting the unimaginable becomes imaginable and then likely very quickly without warning.
Well, that's for certain.
Where are your emphases right now is it movies, plays, writing, or all together, David?
Well, as I say, I finished this movie. I'm planning a new movie that I hope to shoot in the fall with Shia and with John Malkovich.
John Malkovich, is he still active? He's such a great. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I did a play. I guess it's already like 3 years ago. We did a play on the West End. John starred in a comedy I wrote about a fellow very much like Harvey Weinstein. It was pretty freaking funny. And he's working all the time. He's directing a lot of opera and he's doing a lot of acting. So and Al Pacino's going to be in that, and Patti LuPone too.
He wrote
So,
that. Did he direct that movie of in Latin America about the ballerina upstairs? You know, and he had it was a great that she was a communist or she was a terrorist, and this guy, the police guy, falls in love with her, and it was a great movie. I think he directed it.
no,
The,
no, it's
yeah,
very, very
of him.
possible. He works
Yeah,
all the time.
I didn't know that. I didn't know it. I don't see him I don't see him as much on the screen as I used to. And is it? Let me ask you another question. Maybe it's a little bit personal. The more that you are overt in your disgust of this progressive project or whatever you want, is it? Are there seams within Hollywood or the film industry that don't care? They just want to look at talent, or is the majority? Is it? Have you seen roadblocks to you personally, professionally, career-wise?
Well,
As
it's hard to say. You know, I've been whoring around this business for 40, 50 years, and the business very much changed. And I came into movies at the end of the studio system where there were still people, there were guys in power, and you had a cup of coffee with them, and they said, "Oh yeah, Dave, I know your work. What are you making?" I said, "Blah blah blah. What's it going to cost? Okay, who's in it? Okay, good. Go make it. The contract will catch up with you later." There were
wow,
guys who actually had the capacity to make a decision, and those were the people I talked to. XDX years later, it's nothing but committees who are terrified of making a wrong decision because so they don't make a decision. So everything becomes mush. It becomes compromised and is always where there's nobody in charge. It's Gresham's law, right? And the bad decisions turn out throw out the good decision. So I aged out A, and the business changed B, and people don't want to touch me because I'm a conservative. Okay, so this movie I just made, we just found the money independently, and as we're going to with the next movie, and because the movie industry, as we see, is dead. They're making a lot of decisions. They make a lot of movies nobody wants to see.
nobody wants to see them.
Then
Psychodramas.
they make a couple of of tentpole films. And God, I love Tom Cruise. God bless him. They're betting he's going to live forever. But that business is gone. And part of the reason it's gone is that the theaters are gone. Right, the brick and
Yeah.
mortar theaters are gone. So if people aren't going to the theater, they're going to download the movie. So if you're going to download the movie, you don't need the studios, right? You got to catch their attention. You got to figure that out. But other than that, there's no difference. There's no reason to listen. The studios that used to have parking lots full of working people, craftspeople that were the lower middle class, the white, the kind of light blue collar of of Los Angeles, they're all taken up by bureaucrats now. That's if you go to Paramount and Warner's blah blah blah, there's nothing there but bureaucrats who make nothing, right?
Yeah. And the whole
So
thing is fragmented, isn't it, with streaming and online and pod and everything? Is that encouraging that there's seams that you can, or is it just so discombobulated when you don't have the
well,
studio?
people spend their whole lives in Hollywood saying, I had one more meeting, I think I'm getting there. I think I'm blah, blah, blah. They'll spend 20 years literally saying, I had a really good meeting today, or I had a really good audition today. Well, so I was saying to some people the other day, go out and make the movie yourself. You can make a movie on this iPhone. It's not going to be worse than the technology of
Yeah.
Top Gun. Well, I don't know how to do that, they'll say. That's true. But you're better off to spend 10 years figuring out how to do it than to spend 10 years going to meetings and smiling at people who don't have the capacity to say yes.
Let me ask you another question before we end. You live in Santa Monica. Every time I go down into Los Angeles, maybe I go to the wrong places downtown. It seems like I'm going to the ninth ring of the Inferno.
Yeah, that's
Are
true.
you, yeah, it's just the homeless. Are you optimistic? Is there changes? Or when I see Venice Beach and Santa Monica and the downtown, I teach at Pepperdine sometimes, and I go in. I had a daughter that lived in Santa Monica when she was there, and I can't believe uh, pre-COVID and post-COVID. Is it recovered, the LA area, Santa Monica? Is there any hope that it'll renew or what?
Well, I mean, they just burnt down the Palisades. That was cute.
Yeah.
I actually went to see a movie at the Third Street Mall in a brick and mortar theater, or we used to call a movie theater, because I wanted to see this guy. There was nobody there at the theater. And the Third Street Mall, which is like 5 blocks of the most expensive, pretty real estate in the country, it's 3 blocks from the beach. Tens of millions of tourists come there. The Third Street Mall is empty. It looks like about maybe 30% occupancy. Everything else in these shops is for lease because of COVID, because of the riots that came with COVID, and because of homelessness. So the city of Santa Monica, they aren't making very, very smart decisions. So there's that.
I wonder if it's going to change, because when you look at the Palisades, the mayor was in Ghana. The vice mayor was arrested for phoning in an anti-Israel bomb threat. He was under house arrest. I think they've just indicted him.
That's great.
The head of Water and Power was getting $700,000 after failing at PG&E, and they hired her. And the hydrants were not working. The reservoir was empty under her direction. Then the fire chief was bragging about her DEI hiring. The assistant woman was the one that said, if I see a man I can't lift in an emergency, he's in the wrong place. They didn't let people clean the hillsides because of endangered vetch or whatever. It was a complete breakdown of every aspect of radical environmentalism and DEI. And the people, not that all of them were culpable, but I have a feeling, even though the times I've been to Pacific Palisades, they seem to be a little bit more conservative than other places, but they voted for all this. Is there a change in the attitude that, I don't know. I mean, will they keep doing this again and again and again? Or is there, how many times we've talked about you have to keep beating them back, but when you lose these beautiful homes and they're not being quickly rebuilt, and you add this to all the other stuff. I live 5 miles from high-speed rail. There's $30 billion, not one track laid, graffiti on all the overpasses. They had a sign on my street that was shut down. We hire their disabled DEI. They were bragging about the state. And it's like Stonehenge when you look at it. There's just nothing there but overpasses and no track after 15 years. And the whole state, it seems to be dysfunctional. And you're wondering, after the Palisades fire and high-speed rail, if finally people are going to, I mean, LA got rid of Mr. Gascon. That was a good sign. And the mayor. So I don't know how much more the state can take before it either becomes dysfunctional. Half of all the accidents in Fresno County, the person that commits them runs away, illegal aliens. And I live out in an area here that I grew up in. I'm speaking in the house where I grew up. It's my great-great-grandmother built it in 1870. Nobody had a key when we were growing up. Nobody even knew where the key to the house was. And all these farms are gone. An agribusiness concern, about 10,000 acres, rents all the land. The old farmhouses are rented out, mostly to people here illegally. I just got back on my morning walk. I saw 3 refrigerators, 2 dryers thrown in the orchard, a bag of garbage, car seats, and a stripped down car that somebody stole and had dismantled. And it's almost apocalyptic. And maybe I'm being too dramatic, but I really think that California is sort of the first example of a dystopia or decivilization that's happening across. And I don't know how you can arrest it. It just seems the more we get worried about it and say we're going to do it doesn't change, and it's dysfunctional. And I drive to Stanford once a week or once every 2 weeks, and when I was a graduate student, I could do it when we had a population of 18 million in about 2.5 hours, and the roads are on change, and we have 40 million people, and it's crazy. It's like Road Warrior. The roads, the people, it's fit 40 million people for everything you look. I don't see any encouragement anywhere, and that's why I'm pretty pessimistic. And then all the people that I meet that are talented and could have offered constructive, they've all left. They've all gone to Nevada, Tennessee, Florida. I never see people. I went to Boise not long ago to speak, and I was walking by, about 5 people said, "Hi, Victor." I said, "I know you." And they said, "Yes, I'm from Fresno." And the next guy, I said, "Well, what happened?" He goes, "Well, there's a bunch of us from Fresno. We love Boise. We all left. We never told anybody." And I said,
Yeah.
"So I don't want to end on a pessimistic note, but I need some optimism from you, David, on Los Angeles or the state. Anything?
That's a very interesting question. Dennis Prager always used to say that, first off, he said 30 years ago, we're in a civil war. And I said, yeah, I get it. I get it. I understand we're in the prodromo of a civil war, but not even that yet, but we certainly are now. He also said he divided the left into liberals and leftists. And he said he had no fight with the liberals, but he did have a fight with the leftists. And I always thought he was absolutely wrong. I thought he had it absolutely upside down, that the leftists couldn't exist without the liberals. And that's what I think now.
I think you're right. I think they're the ones that empower them.
Sure. So what we're looking at in California is some brain dead liberals who say that they can afford to say, oh, border because it doesn't affect them. And then when it does affect them, the question is, do they change? I don't think they do. I think they leave California.
I think that's it. They have their ideology. I think we're all lab rats or guinea pigs, and they experiment on us, and they're assumed that they're always exempt from the consequences of their ideology because of their zip code or their money or their titles. But they do things like gas. When I go to Palo Alto, it's $6.50. I was in Michigan not too long ago. It was $2.50, and I see all these poor Mexican American people and illegals here paying $5.50 a gallon when California
Yeah.
has the fourth largest oil reserves, and they can't afford it. So I go to the gas station. It's a big line because it's a discount gas station. They pay $20. They fill up and they think, I got another $10. I'll go back in and give them $10. And I talk to them, all these people, and say, I can't afford $140 for my truck. But the people who did that policy of not drilling or driving out refineries or special blends, they don't care because they either have enough money or they don't drive 50 miles a day or something. And that's true of the school system. It's true of natural resources. It's all a coastal elite from San Diego to Berkeley, about 15 million people that are some of the wealthiest, most powerful people in the world, and they dictate for everybody else in the state. And they never have to experience what they do to the schools or the infrastructure or race relations. And they reminds me of a passage in Tacitus's history when this tribal chieftain goes to the Romans. You know the passage, I think. He says, I can't negotiate with you people because you make a desert and call it peace.
Sorry.
Anyway.
Well, Elon got it right. He said it's the most expensive weather in the world.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, it's good. Huh? It's true.
Let me just ask you your final thoughts because I so respect. What do you think about Elon? I think he's a Renaissance guy and I really appreciate him.
I'm crazy about him.
I
And
am too.
here's the thing, that the perfect example of these idiots who say we have to have electric vehicles, we have to have, in effect, it's praying to the sun god. Oh, God of wind, power my house. Oh, God of sun, power my house. Elon comes along with an electric car and they say, thank you, because we're going to ban the internal combustion engine. He goes to work for Trump and they say, kill him. Do we need to know anything more about the left?
I was thinking, to try to be dispassionate, I went back and looked at Alexander Graham Bell, Thomas Edison, the Wright brothers. He's not even like those people because he's revolutionized. I'm speaking to you on Starlink and I'm out in the middle of nowhere. He's brought internet to the world at an affordable price to inaccessible locations. He revolutionized the EV. My wife has a Tesla and she swears by it. And then we've got Neuralink, but he opened up social media and these rockets are incredible. He's got more. I was listening to a talk by Larry Ellison, another guy that I had never heard, and I have so much respect for him. He was absolutely brilliant. He went through the entire, one of the questions was, what do you think of Elon? And he said something I never thought. He said, to the audience, how many satellites does the EU have and China have in the United States government? He said, whatever they are times 2, that's Elon.
Yeah.
So he's done things that Henry Ford didn't. He's in so many different fields, and he's changed the life of so many million people that it's almost sacrilegious to do what they say about him and what they do to his branding.
Well, it's savagery.
It is. It is. It reminds me, being on a campus what they say about Israel too. You know, when you look at Israel, what it did, it really empowered the United States by getting rid of Hamas and dealing with the Houthis and Hezbollah and taking out the air defenses of this pernicious Iran, and then their tech system. And every time I go to Israel, I cannot believe it. I mean, Haifa looks like San Francisco did in Vertigo, that Hitchcock movie. It looks clean, it's functional,
Yeah.
everybody's happy, and it's almost like Elon. They hate it because it's so talented and successful, and I don't know what it is
Well,
about.
it's a hatred of modernity, which is why a lot of the left embraced Islam.
Because it's pre-civilizational, I suppose. But they seem to like every time I see somebody who doesn't like Israel, I always ask them, where did you stay? Have you ever been to Israel? And once in a while they say yes, and they always say the same thing, the Four Seasons, King David.
Of
I said,
course.
why don't you stay in Ramallah? Why don't you go to Gaza City?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the same thing with Elon. I think that's why all these people are shocked. There's always a story in the news that some guy is very left wing and he's shocked that somebody attacked his Tesla. So anyway, we covered a lot of ground. David, where can we get your book on the Disenlightenment?
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon, absolutely so. And you can look at my movie, henryjohnsonmovie.com. And I think you'll enjoy it.
I
It's
think
kind
so
of
too.
it's kind of an homage to maybe Ivanov by Chekhov. It's a guy who thinks so well that he ends up uh, on a descent into hell.
When did it get online? When did it?
I think just now as we
Just
speak.
now. So we
Hey,
can get
listen.
it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, did you know that the president endorsed my book? Did you know that?
All I knew was that he called you after, was that in June or when you were on Bill Maher?
Oh, no, this was a couple of years ago. He called me
Yeah.
when he was out of office when I was on Bill Maher.
Yeah.
And he said, I saw you on Bill Maher. I thought you were great, but P.S. He maneuvered you into saying you don't know whether the election was stolen or not. David, the election was stolen. Then he talked to me for 20 minutes. It was great. No, but this new book that just came out, The Disenlightenment,
Yes.
he tweeted, this is a great book. You got to
That's
buy
great.
it.
That's great.
It's amazing.
That's great. I was just thinking the other day about something. There were two things about him that hadn't seen remarked about. And when he ran before, I wrote about it, but it had nobody paid any attention. He was the only candidate when he went to the Rust Belt or farming, he used the first person personal pronoun our. He said, I love our farmers. I love our workers, our. And I never heard a politician say our. And the other thing is, I was curious about what he says about Ukraine. So I went back and I Googled slaughter, bloodbath, catastrophe, tragedy, plus Obama, where they invaded during 2014 on his watch. Then I looked Biden, nothing. And then you look
Yeah.
at Trump, he always talks about the human tragedy. He always says, this is horrible. These young people are being destroyed. It's horrible. This killing. We got to
Yeah.
stop it. But nobody else has ever said that about it. It's always, we can emasculate Putin or we've got to put Ukraine. It's always geostrategic gobbledygook. But he's the only one that talks as if it's a Verdun or Somme or Stalingrad. 1.6 million dead, wounded, and missing. And it's going on and on. But it really, I don't know if it's because he's a builder and he likes to build things and it doesn't make logic to destroy it, or I think it's more, he actually, for all of the attacks on him as being crude and he's actually much more sensitive to the loss of human life than any other president that we've had. It's on the record. I don't think people appreciate that about him.
Yeah, I love him. I'm crazy about him.
Yeah.
He speaks English.
He sounds like a character in a lot of your plays, David.
Now, S.I. Hayakawa wrote
Yes,
a
I
book.
loved him. I loved
Me
him.
too. He wrote a book called Language and Thought in Action.
He was a
It the
great
first
San
one.
Francisco State linguist.
That's right,
Great.
San Francisco State. It was about semantics and the
Yes.
early introduction to semantics. And if I get time for a quick story, he says, here's an example. He says, a guy talking about talking to the people. He says, a guy from Oxford is campaigning for electoral reform in Yorkshire, right? And the guy in Yorkshire says to the Oxford guy, says, what does all this mean one man, one vote. What does that mean, one man, one vote? And the guy from Oxford says, well, quite simply, it means one bloody man, one bloody vote. And the Yorkshireman says, well, why the hell can't they say so?
He had that little, what was they called it? That little Tamersham or something.
Oh, yeah.
And then he ran for Senate, and they called him Sleeping Sam. He would take a nap, and they criticized him. He's a one-term senator, and he said, "Listen, I'm not going to go so easily. My mom lived to be 97. I think he almost did too." But he was on San Francisco State. I think he was the provost or something, and he walked by that free speech that said no loud music, and they were yelling "kill," I don't know, all of it. And he got up and he pulled out all the chords and that made him famous. Everybody was waiting for that moment, and he gave it to them.
Yeah, good for him.
Anyway, David, it's been fascinating, and I hope everybody goes out and buys David's book. And David is sort of like Elon Musk. He really is. Playwright, author, director, screenwriter. He does it all, and he does it with grace and humble. He's humble, and he's an American, I don't know, an American fixture, American treasure. And we really appreciate it, David.
Great talking to you, Victor.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.